Hi guys, welcome back to George Reads once again, where today we are reading the final chapter of I'm Telling You They're Aliens by Jeremy Strong. The last time in chapter 11, Marsha's mum came home to find Petal and all of the mess in the kitchen, and she got a bit cross about Rob and Marsha thinking that the neighbours were aliens. She thought that they were just making it up, so they're going to go to the Vaux's house and explain everything to them about why they've got their baby and why they trapped Norman in the cellar, waiting for him to turn into an alien. So this is the final chapter of the book. If you haven't seen any of the other videos, I suggest you go check them out after the video. They're pretty cool. And without further ado, let's read the final chapter of I'm Telling You They're Aliens. Chapter 12. All is revealed. Death came in the shape of Mr. Vaughn, his eyes fixed on Norman and the baby. "Where have you two been?" he scowled. "Your mother's been looking everywhere. We told you not to leave the house." "I'm afraid these two have got something to do with that, Mr. Vaughn. Do you mind if we come in? They've got a bit of explaining to do and something they want to tell you." Without waiting to be asked, Marsha's mum pushed past him into the little hall, and the rest of us followed. "They shut me in the cellar, Dad," snarled Norman. "I couldn't get out." "You what?" "Who's that?" cried Mrs. Vaughn, hurrying through the back of the house. "There you are! Where have you been?" "In a cellar," growled Mr. Vaughn. "In a cellar?" Mrs. Vaughn seemed mystified. "They think your son's an alien from outer space," sighed Miss Zulinski. "An alien?" Mrs. Vaughn seemed even more mystified. "Is it his ears?" "An alien?" growled Mr. Vaughn. His thick eyebrows had knitted together over his eyes like matting caterpillars. "I think we'd all better sit down while Marsha explains," suggested Miss Zulinski. "Why me?" Her mother pushed us through to the Vaux's front room. "Just get on with it," said Miss Zulinski, and then caught her breath. "My goodness, what a lot of computers and TVs and music systems. Are those mixing decks?" "I'm in the business," said Mr. Vaughn, and his hairy caterpillar started crawling down the top of his nose. "He does repairs, you know." Mrs. Vaugh's voice trailed away. Miss Zulinski was staring at the electronic mountain. Of course, it was no surprise to Marsha and me. We'd seen it all before. The only difference was that in broad daylight it did look rather much more ordinary, apart from the fact that there was so much of it. Marsha seemed very taken with one particular television. From the doorway, Mr. Vaughn watched everyone carefully. His eyes had gone into darting mode. Marsha straightened up. "This television comes from our school. It's got our school name written on the side in indelible ink. That's so nobody could steal it." She gazed steadily at Mr. Vaughn. "But somebody did steal it a few days ago, and now it's here." The silence this announcement produced fell into the room like a boulder dropped from outer space. A silent boulder. It was stunning. The only noise was the sound of my brain whirring inside my head as things began to make a new kind of sense to me. Mr. Vaux's big body was blocking the door. He scowled back at Marsha and Miss Zulinski. Mrs. Vaughn began to whimper in the corner. "The girl knows," she whispered desperately. "I knew this would happen. It always does. You and Norman, you can't stop." "Shut up!" Miss Zulinski's eyes widened. "Then all this equipment here, it's all stolen." Dum dum dum. Still, Mr. Vaughn didn't answer, and Marsha's mother moved towards the door. "I'm going to call the police." Mr. Vaughn blocked her way. "You're not going anywhere." "I beg your pardon." "Shut up and sit down." "What are we going to do?" whined Mrs. Vaughn. "We'll have to move on," snapped her husband, "like we did last time. But first of all, we have to fix this lot." "I've had enough of this," cried Marsha's mum. "Let us through." She had tried to get past, but Mr. Vaughn gave her such a shove that she stumbled back across the room and collapsed into an armchair. Marsha launched herself at Mr. Vaughn, which would have been brave and wonderful if she had done her usual party piece and tripped over her own gangly legs. She fell at his feet and ended up beating her fist on his knees rather than his chest. "Don't you dare touch my mother!" Mr. Vaughn laughed. It was horrible. It was like the laugh of Killer King from Krog. He was a very scary person, giving off incredibly menacing vibes. I could almost see them shimmering around his hulk, like in some horror movie. His eyes looked as if a million volts of electricity were charging through them. This wasn't like Norman's little red doot-doot-doots. This was mega phaser stuff. Pew, 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 pew. I thought he was going to turn into an alien right there on the front room carpet. Except, of course, he wasn't an alien, as we now knew, to our cost. I have to admit, I was impressed by Marshall's attack on Mr. Vork. It was pretty brave. You can't keep us prisoners forever, I said, just because you know you've been thieving all over the place. How long are you going to hold us here? Shut it! I've had it up to here with you lot. Norman, you start taking the stuff out of the truck. It's round the back. Anyone makes a wrong move and that's it. You lot know too much for your own good. What are you going to do with us? Asked Miss Zielinski in a tired voice. Mr. Vork curled his lip. I'll think of something. Norman and his mother began carting TVs and computers out through the back of the house, while Mr. Vork watched over us. At one point, he told Norman to fetch the stuff from upstairs, and several minutes later, Norman came clumping back down, struggling under the weight of, guess what? An alien. There it was, and I mean, there it was, in Norman's scraggy arms. 3 legs, tentacles, poisonous frills, the whole lot. You know what it was? A giant pot plant. It was some kind of big, frilly green thing, stuck in a pointed pole that rested on a metal stand with 3 legs. I think that was the lowest point I'd ever reached in my life. I just wanted to hide for 100 years. That alien we saw in the Vorks' house was actually a plant. Marshall and I glanced at each other and then quickly turned away. I don't know which of us felt more embarrassed. Silence descended. It was like waiting for the end of the day at school. You know how it almost gets to home time and then the classroom's clock seems to stop altogether? Time doesn't move forward at all, and you're waiting and waiting. And then the window burst into a million fragments of glass, and a man came hurtling through and landed on the carpet. "Everyone freeze!" he yelled. And about time too. I've been waiting for this moment ever since I contacted the police on the phone. Ha! And all along you've been thinking what a wally I am. I managed to unhook the Vorks' phone and press 999 while Marshall was making a lunge for Norman's dad, and all eyes were on her. I knew I wouldn't actually be able to speak to the police without Mr. Vork hearing, but I reckoned that if I could keep the channel open, then they would hear the conversation, work out what was happening, and trace the call. And that is almost it. Mr. Vork was overpowered. Waiting outside the house were 6 police cars and most of the neighbours, all agog with excitement. The police swarmed over the house and they found stolen goods in almost every room. There were 3 more potted aliens upstairs and a load of other plants. Mr. Vork had been doing over garden centres too. Apparently, the plants were worth hundreds. The police had been after Vork for months. When he was finally marched out of the house to a waiting police van, Mrs. Parslow almost went berserk. She tried to kick his shins as he went past. "That's the one that attacked me yesterday! You put a blanket over me, you horrible man!" "Everyone's mad around here," muttered Mr. Vork, shaking his head. Then he vanished into the van, closely followed by his son. Norman had made everything up about being an alien and the photonic shield and all that. He had simply used my own fears to protect his dad. They were in it together, and Marshall and I had caught them. It was almost like the famous 5, except there were only 2 of us, and we didn't have a dog, so it was even better. Strange thing, when everyone at school heard about it, they stopped calling Marcia Buckbrush. As for me, I still worry, and I still play the violin, and I'm getting much better at both. My pockets are still full of bandages. I mean, you never know when you might need an emergency nappy. They haven't stopped calling me Chicken Licken at school, but it's like a friendly joke now. They know I'm a warrior, and they also know I caught the Vorks. Even Kevin Derber was impressed. Anyhow, I like worrying. I had some spots come up this morning, red ones with tiny yellow dot in the centre. I've looked them up in my encyclopedia, and I reckon it's the first sign of Frobisher's scrophula. All your skin flakes off and your bones fall apart. It's fatal, of course. Marcia said that she'll look after me. She reckons that we're all aliens, all of us. You, me, her, everyone. How do you work that out? I asked. I just mean that we all seem strange to everyone except ourselves. You don't think you're peculiar, but lots of other people think you do. It's the same with everyone, and it's the same with me and just about everyone. It's like we're aliens to each other. I screwed up my nose. You're weird, I said. Marsha's face broke into a huge smile as she chuckled. Exactly. Oh yes, you remember that sign Mr. and Mrs. Vork had on their throats? I saw it again a few days later on my computer screen. I was looking at Mystic Myrtle the Cosmic Turtle, as she was doing next month's birthday sign. It was Gemini, the twins. The star pattern was identical. I knew I'd seen it somewhere before. I suppose Mr. and Mrs. Vork had each had the tattoo done in their lovey-dovey days. Not even Marsha had got that one. And there's one other thing. If that wasn't a UFO over the Vorks' house that night, then what was it? And that's the end of I'm Telling You They're Aliens. This has been a great second series for the channel, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I also hope that you guys will leave a like and subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated, and it helps the channel loads. If this happens to be the first video you see by me, please go check out my other videos in the past. The rest of the chapters of I'm Telling You They're Aliens, and the first book I read on my channel, which is Boom by Mark Haddon. Both of those books have done extremely well, and I'm hoping that the channel will continue its success. And tomorrow I'll be revealing the next book for the channel, so there's a lot to look forward to. And after that I'll be reading chapter 1 and starting a new series of George Reads. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe and like, and goodbye.